Canada has made it pretty clear that foreign real estate investors are no longer welcome. With wealth taxes that are disguised as speculation, empty homes, and underutilized housing taxes, along with foreign buyer taxes tacked on of up to 20% of the purchase price, and now even an outright ban, it's no wonder that so many non-residents are looking to sell their properties here. And if you found this video because you are a foreign owner looking to sell your property in the province of BC or Canada in general, the process can be very different for you than it would be for a Canadian. It's not just about finding the right buyer, negotiating, and closing the deal. It's way more involved and expensive for you. So you had better understand exactly what to expect, because it might not only cost you a whole lot of money, but it could kill the deal altogether. Just one small miscalculation of what you owe could put your finances in hot water. So stay tuned to understand the three major factors that every foreign investor, foreign property owner needs to know when selling their property here in BC. And if you're a Canadian and you don't think this video applies to you, or that you don't need to watch this video all the way to the end, boy, are you wrong. Because in a crazy lawsuit a few years ago, a buyer was found to have been liable for the CRA's tax on the seller of $695,000 plus penalties and interest. All because the buyer did not verify that the seller was foreign. And guess what? They were. So buckle up and subscribe to the channel, because it could save you $700,000, which would for sure be worth at least one click of the like button. And know that if you're looking to buy, or if you do own real estate here as a foreigner and you're looking at getting your money out of Canada, well, you can book a call with me right now using the first link in the description below. Now, as a non-resident seller, that's what they're called, there are three major parts of the transaction that are going to differ when you're selling a property as compared to what the normal process would be for a Canadian. The first and most important step is obtaining something called the Certificate of Compliance, otherwise commonly referred to as a clearance certificate. Basically, this is a document from the Canada Revenue Agency that confirms the seller has paid all of their taxes owed before the money comes out of the country. Because the owner is not Canadian or overseas somewhere, there is for sure going to be capital gains on the property of their sale if they see a profit. And the clearance certificate makes sure that Mark Carney gets his fair share and that taxes are confirmed as paid. But this single document can take as little as 2 months to obtain, and often 6 months or more. And the way the transaction works is you have to put in the sale price into that document when you're applying. So you're going to have to wait until you get an accepted offer, or really a firm offer, before you can apply for it, so you know exactly how much the property will sell for. So chances are that you can obtain the Certificate of Compliance between the deal firming up and closing. Well, they're lower than the Canucks' chances in a Game 7. And this is a very good time to discuss the lawsuit that I mentioned earlier. You see, back in 2017, the BC Supreme Court made headlines when a Canadian buyer of a property was hit with a bill for $695,000 because the seller was a non-resident. And under Canada's Income Tax Act, if a foreign seller does not obtain a clearance certificate or a certificate of compliance, those again can kind of be used interchangeably, even though I think technically a clearance certificate refers to an estate, that the buyer of said property can be held or is held responsible for the seller's unpaid taxes. In this case, the CRA went after the buyer directly because the seller skipped the country without paying. And the buyer is legally responsible to hold back money because the CRA has no authority to go overseas and hunt down taxes of non-Canadians. Now, the actual lawsuit determined that it was the buyer's notary that didn't end up doing enough to make reasonable inquiries into if the seller was legally a Canadian resident or not for tax purposes. And let's face it, it was most likely put upon the notary because they have errors and omissions insurance, and that's a whole lot more palatable than the buyer paying themselves. And this ruling forced major changes in how real estate contracts are written here in BC. Today's CPS has a spot where both the buyer and the seller have to declare if they are a resident of Canada or not for tax purposes. And if the seller is not a resident, then it's up to the buyer, or more importantly, the buyer's lawyer, to hold back a total of 25% of the entire purchase price in the transaction. Until, of course, the certificate can be obtained, but that's not 25% of the seller's equity or 25% of the seller's profit. It's 25% of the purchase price on the contract. And in some cases, it may even need to be higher. Now, here, let me explain how it might kill your deal. If after closing costs and realtor fees, the seller doesn't have more than 25% equity in the property, they simply can't sell because the mortgage holder, maybe a bank or likely a bank, will not let the title clear unless they are paid out in full. So let's say the property, for example, sells for $1 million. Realtor fees might be about $30,000. Lawyers, maybe another $2,000 to $5,000 more. And of course, there's going to be some sort of cost for getting the clearance certificate itself. And mortgage penalties, I don't know, let's estimate them at about $15,000 if there's a $750,000 mortgage still remaining on that property, giving us only about $200,000 in equity. But the buyers would be required to hold back $250,000, shorting the mortgage by about $50,000. So the only way to get this deal together would be to get that clearance certificate in advance of the closing. And what buyer wants to do a closing of a sale maybe 6 months away or more? Not many. The next thing you need to know before you even consider starting the process is that here, as an agent in Canada, I am required, or your agent will be required, to confirm with you what we call FINTRAC. This is Canada's anti-money laundering legislation. Now, we have to do this on any transaction, but if you're overseas, this means you may actually need to make a trip here to get your identity confirmed, and the scrutiny upon you will be higher. And no, sorry, things like phone calls or Zoom meetings, they just don't cut it. You either need to come meet your agent in person. Maybe you could get your ID verified, like at a notary in the country of which you reside. Or thankfully, AI has really stepped up in this area, and there are now a few web-based platforms that will allow you to certify yourself with a series of selfies and scanning of government IDs. But yes, your agent must confirm your identity, and it will probably be a pain in the butt. There's no avoiding it. And last, I mentioned lawyers earlier. Your lawyer, too, is required to meet with you in person to sign the closing documents and, again, confirm your identity. So you can either fly in a second time to close the deal, which might be at great expense, or you will need to hire possibly another lawyer or notary, again in your country of residence, to witness the signing and help with all of the final paperwork. And that will, of course, come with an added extra expense, because now you will not only have a lawyer here in BC, which is required to close the deal, but also one where you are to witness the paperwork. Both could have surcharges, by the way. But thankfully, you found this video so you can be prepared. And if your property is located in BC and you need help, well, you can book a call with me right now using the link below, or discover more about how my team sells property by checking out this video right now for your complete guide to selling your home in Surrey, BC.